Alright, so I'm on Facebook and I'm friends with Santos Bonacci, and posted this: natural causes for California fires, proofs and the evidence. They captured a helicopter causing fires in California and the United States. Go ahead. Sorry. Well, I'll explain. I mean, that looks pretty freaking crazy. Why would someone be doing that, right? Oh, actually, let me go back to, oops. What is, okay, I don't know what link came out like that, but anyways, controlled burns happen all the time. The military learned during Vietnam how to clear natural debris. Excuse me. This is an extreme case of fire management. Calm down and do your research. I'm not saying that there isn't anything more going on, because I truly believe that there is. Just do your homework. I know fire a little bit. I could have, I was being lazy when I typed that up, but I don't. Let's see. Actually, let me. I can't edit it. Why am I not allowed to edit? Alright, and sorry, we're gonna do some, computer troubleshooting. Alright, and so, I'm using my phone horizontally, so I'm all jacked up. Let me see if it comes out the same. It is coming out the same. Never mind. Alright, so, go back to this. Anyways, I mean, I can't do everyone's work for themselves. Unlike house fire, which falls 1,000 gallons of water. Basically, this is a helicopter. It's about creating fire breaks and stuff, as we see here. And yeah, I mean, just do your homework. So this helicopter, there are more mundane ways to set control fire or burns. Like, if you say basically handheld flares, and I'll show you some of this. And actually at the Rodman campgrounds and whatnot, rec center or whatever it is, they actually spoke of controlled burns and explained how there was a devastating forest fire that happened. I forget how long. It was a while ago, but still significant. And so this helicopter is used, to get into areas where it's hard to get people. And just from making fires myself, I understand that it's really hard to catch even dry wood on fire, real hard wood on fire, even with all the, kindling and stuff like that. Things might get scorched a little bit, but they're not going to burn all the way down. They're not going to catch fire. And so what this thing does is, what the hell? So, the whole combined aviation gasoline, which doesn't evaporate as quickly as standard gas, and a gelling agent. to light the fire and shoot out a giant contraption hanging a few dozen feet below a helicopter. Basically, we put napalm down there, which is why I explained the Vietnam thing, is because, and actually that was developed, and napalm was actually developed during World War II for this crazy operation with, I forget what it's called, but it was essentially the bat bomb. And what it was is that we were going to drop bats out of airplanes, and the bats were going to carry a payload of, I think it was like, 0.5 grams or something like that, of a burning agent. And being that Japan had a lot of rice paper and, bamboo, a lot of wood structures and stuff, we could create devastating havoc by launching these bat bombs. And so it was by doing the so we need to come up with a very contaminating, very powerful burning material. It was something that was light enough for something like a bat to use, because the idea behind it was that bats will find the darkest place we do it during the day, to kind of stake out, because they're nocturnal animals. And so what they're going to do is find all these little crevices and stuff in buildings. And the thing is that it actually worked out really, really well. And that's how napalm was created. And but the atomic, and it actually worked out really well, because it actually burned down the Air Force Base. And it was actually, if the atomic bomb didn't happen, we were actually going to be using that.
Convinced of the bat bomb's potential, the Marine Corps launches Project X-Ray, and the team starts putting the finishing touches to their weapon. Doc Adams has designed a purpose-built bombshell. The 5-foot container will hold over 1,000 bats, snoozing in separate compartments on 26 trays. The bomb will be dropped from high altitude. At 4,000 feet, a barometric device deploys a parachute, and the outer casing simultaneously falls away. The trays open like an accordion, freeing the bats from their compartments. Each one then acts as a launching platform, allowing the bats time to wake up. As they take flight, a hair-thin wire arms the incendiaries, primed to go off in 30 minutes. In December 1943, at Dugway Proving Ground, Utah, the bat bomb is readied for testing, to be dropped over a replica Japanese town built in the desert.
There was quite a crowd there, mostly statisticians and just, high-ranking observers.
The weapon is taken up in a bomber and released. It works perfectly. The bats disperse and hide under eaves and in attics, just as expected. Observers get to work comparing the bat bomb to conventional incendiaries. There may have been skepticism before, but what they find is impressive.
So, I know what I'm talking about a little bit.
American Arsenal is a history of the
weapons,
technology and strategies of the 20th century.
I just realized that my phone is doing it all stupid. So maybe I'm just going to continue like this. Or, yeah, no, I don't even know. Okay, whatever.
In 15 stories, it describes America's unplanned transformation from an isolationist nation before World War I to the world's only superpower today. This video is a condensation of the story of the invention and test of napalm. Napalm entered the American arsenal 70 years ago in 1943. It is usually associated with the Vietnam War, but it killed far more in World War II than it did in Vietnam. This slide shows a formation of B-29 bombers flying past Japan's Mount Fuji on their way to Tokyo. 100,000 died in Tokyo on the night of March 9th and 10th, 1945. The firestorm, fueled by napalm, was more deadly than the atomic attacks on either Hiroshima or Nagasaki. 66 Japanese cities would eventually be nearly obliterated in napalm incendiary attacks. Napalm was invented by Julius Spieser, a Harvard chemistry professor. In February 1942, Spieser mixed aluminum naphthenate, aluminum palmitate, and gasoline and found that it stuck and burned violently. This is a photo of Spieser's test of napalm behind Harvard's football stadium. Spieser became involved in Project X-Ray, an attempt to fasten pencil-sized napalm time-fused firebombs to hibernating bats. Bombers were to release the bats by the hundreds of thousands over Japanese cities, where they would roost in attics, detonate a few hours later, and burn down urban Japan. Spieser managed to burn down an American airfield during tests. This is the photo of that. But the war ended too soon for the bat bomb to see use. The Army wanted to test and fine-tune its napalm-filled bombs against what it saw as their logical target, houses. It built the German-Japanese village, a collection of simulated German and Japanese dwellings. No expense was spared. Architects who had worked in Germany and Japan designed the buildings, which were authentically furnished down to the clothes in the closets and the children's toys in the bedrooms. This is a photo of one of the rooms in the Japanese housing.
Data.
Spieser was proud of napalm, but he was unprepared for the reaction during the Vietnam War, when Harvard students shouted "baby killer" and spat on him as he crossed campus. The rest of his scientific achievements mattered little. The world knew him as the man who had invented napalm.
You know, and so that's, you know, one of the punishments of being an inventor is that some people will use what could be potentially good for something drastically bad, and then I'm in a bad location. If you can't see that, I'm only on 3G here in Texas. And I figure that you see me looking this up, so I don't need to really copyright things, and I mean, you all have the same
California
tools.
facing a mega drought. Many fear that fire season this year will be bigger and more devastating than previous years. But is there a way we could fight forest fires with fire?
This was 3 years ago.
Hey guys, Julia here for D News. With drought drying up the west, the threat of wildfires is more dire than ever. In the past 5 years, many states have seen the biggest fires in 50 years. Previous wildfires have caused millions of dollars in damage to homes and properties. Some fires were even deadly. So it's no wonder the US government spends billions every year to fight them. But unfortunately, it's not a simple case as some bear in a hat wants us to believe. Historically, places like California saw big burns every year. But as more and more people moved west, forest fires had to be stopped. But decades of fighting forest fires actually made things worse for a little while and made some ecosystems less diverse. And suppressing natural fires led to a buildup of debris and clutter on the forest floor, setting the stage for disasters to come. After the Yellowstone fires of 1988 and the fire season of 2000, people began to understand that some ecosystems need fire. They've evolved to make use of it. Fire is part of their natural life cycle. Fire benefits an ecosystem in a few ways. Sometimes it breaks down nutrients in a flash, literally. It breaks down nutrients from leaves, logs, and other debris that otherwise would have taken years or decades to break down and return to the soil. Some plants actually need fire and heat to thrive, like the giant sequoias in Sierra Nevada region in California. They need the heat of fire to reproduce. Sequoias make large cones that only open and disperse their seeds when they dry up. One of the primary ways they dry out is, you guessed it, the heat of a fire. But they aren't the only ones. In the pinelands of New Jersey, there's several species that need fire to reproduce, including the pygmy pitch pine. The small plant evolved a few ways to fight fire. It's got thick bark that protects it from heat, but if the trunk happens to be damaged by fire, it can regrow sprouts from the wound. Fire doesn't just help things grow, sometimes its powers of destruction are for good. By clearing out clutter, it can destroy invasive species or harmful insects, and can even open up the dense forest canopy to allow sunlight to reach the forest floor so more things can grow. It also creates new areas of grasslands, which some species of animals depend on for shelter or food. So what do we do? Is there a way we can protect our homes while still allowing these delicate ecosystems to thrive? So every year, some forestry services practice what's called controlled burn or prescribed fire. Yes, there are people whose job it is to set fires on purpose. But it's a tricky business. The conditions have to be just right or a fire could get quickly out of control. If conditions are too dry, the fire can get too hot or too big, and there are a few cases of controlled burns getting out of control. If too damp, well, nothing's going to burn. In the pinelands of New Jersey, parameters for burning are tight, like it has to be under 55 degrees, wind speed should be around 7 to 12 miles per hour, and about 2 or 3 days since the last rainfall. In some years, they can burn up to 22,000 acres of forest a year in controlled burns, and this policy seems to be helping. One study published in the journal Ecosphere found that areas that were purposefully burned had twice as many native plant species as non-burned areas after 10 years. And other studies from the Ecological Society of America show that prescribed burns reduce the severity of wildfires. But these are small, very well-managed, controlled burns. So it seems it really pays to fight fire with fire, but only if you're a professional with a permit, so still listen to that bear in a hat. Have you got any more burning science questions?
So, I just want to put that out there, that so that when we see videos
holidays, same chaos every year.
Okay, so I wish I could indicate. Let me see if I can indicate. Okay. So I've guess got to do this method. So what I want to show you is, okay, because I actually understand fire. So nothing, nothing else is, this, like, straight through, this is the burn zone. They're only burning, everything out here isn't. Made a little sun. You see? Controlled burn. From the helicopter. A very lush vegetation. I mean, and what they're doing in California, you know, if there's evidence of it, you know, then they're at least they're creating a fire break. There's some emergency, you know, measures being taken. And there's boots on the ground too. Well, I shouldn't say there's boots on the ground. Like the thing is, like, boots can be on the ground, and but see, like, all it's doing is just smoldering. It's just smoldering. Because the material being used, you know, is a very high intensity of heat, and so what it does, you know, and the things are relatively moist, and so everything that is burnt off was, you know, already, it just decomposes things faster. That's all fire is. I mean, oh my god, fire's bad. Look at all that smoke going. It's... That would have happened anyways. We're living in a contained system. All the carbon that's on Earth has been here. And it's doing more things than... You know, it's... Okay, so I'm gonna bring it down the rabbit hole real quick, actually. You know, I've already started going down this far, so mother fudge nut. Let's just go to my I want to just go to my subscriptions. Hold on a second. My signal really sucks to be forever to find this.
Claims that the Earth is eating its own oceans. The study reveals that 3 times more ocean water is being sucked into the Earth's interior than originally estimated. RT's Trinity Chavez explains.
As Earth's tectonic plates dive beneath one another, they drag 3 times as much water into the planet's interior as previously thought. Published in the journal Nature, researchers used the earthquake-prone subduction zone at the Marianas Trench for their study. But why is this research so significant? Well, that's because the water could help in the development of magma and lubricate faults, which, according to marine geology and geophysics researcher at Columbia University, Donna Shillington, makes earthquakes more likely to occur.
I honestly don't see how water is lubricating anything. Excuse me. Being that, well, I mean, unless it goes through a phase, you know, and this goes in line with, and everyone's say that, you know, oil, you know, it's fossil fuels and stuff. Well, I mean, okay, excuse me, the chemistry is there, but I don't think the science is. I mean, all these bodies, you know, all these lives, earthlings, you know, plants, you know, on down to bacteria, you know, to, you know, single cell protoplasma invertebrate jellies, like humans. I mean, like, it would have to be all collected in one spot. And that's the thing, is that if all this water is going out into the earth, well, water is the universal soluble. It's virtually indestructible. It is not compressible. It has different phases, or it does things like when it cools, it expands instead of contracts. Water is very significant.
In her study, she says water is as crucial to the workings of Earth's interior as it is to Earth's surface processes. Among other things, it triggers magma generation beneath volcanoes, lubricates deep fault zones, and fundamentally alters the strength and behavior of Earth's mantle. Using velocity measurements stretching down to 18 miles below the surface in a combination of known temperatures and pressures, researchers were able to calculate that subduction zones swallow 3 billion teragrams of water into the crust every million years. According to a Washington University release, most of the water being subducted into the Earth is believed to be emitted back into the atmosphere as water vapor in volcanic eruptions. But what's interesting is that the amount of ocean water ingested by the Earth and the amount being emitted is not actually equal. In fact, the amount of water...
And that's the thing that I don't believe, is because we haven't mapped the oceans, and there's lots of geysers and vents and different areas that we have not even investigated, you know, for this pressure relief.
Drastically exceeds the amount of water coming out. Now, since we aren't missing any water in the oceans, the findings suggest that scientists are actually missing something about the way our water moves through our Earth's interior.
No kidding.
Trinity Chavez, RT.
And so what I'm going to show you. And essentially, Earth is a sealed system, and water is going through triple point. Because there's gas, liquid, and solid forms of water. There's ice, there's oceans, lakes, water, you know, condensation, and there's clouds. And sorry, I've got a big rig next to me now, and so my signal sucks even more. I'm in Texas. Pardon me. I know it's a long video. Hopefully you find it interesting, aside from
what happens, but
the circle of death.
This is the patient stage. You can see there's kind of a cease of the boiling. There's not as much. And to explain why we have those stones in there, they're called boiling chips, and they just make it so that when it boils, it's not like it all splashes out. They kind of just allow for a more even boil rather than a rolling boil that would kind of spill up.
For people that are supposed to be science, you know, aficionados and stuff, they can just say that the stones are dampen the vibrations caused by the boiling of the water due to the volume capacity of the container. But I'm just a high school dropout infantry grunt They got kicked out 4 colleges.
And potentially kind of ruin the integrity of the experiment. So they're not doing anything other than just helping the boiling process to... There it goes. And you can see it should still keep freezing, and then as it freezes, you'll see it boiling below the surface a little as well. Can you see that?
And basically what I proved is that these people, they know how to do someone else's work. Whereas what I know is I know how to work with somebody, and I know how to work for myself. I'm more of a teamwork player. I'm not a institutionalized student loan debt slave.
The ice forms, it's also boiling. So you've got your 3 phases, your gas phase, your solid phase.
I mean, but why? I want to hear you explain why. And
liquid phase, all existing at the same time. This is actually almost the best boiling I've seen with the ice so far today. And then sometimes the ice will move because it will boil underneath it. So
oh my god, but you're not explaining anything. You're not explaining anything. So basically what's happening here is the water is under vacuum, and when water is under vacuum at room temperature, it will boil.
So this would be your triple point.
When water boils, I mean, evaporation is a cooling off process, and so
all substances should have a triple.
Being that there's vapor being created by the boiling of the water, it starts to create its.
Some of them are at very low pressures, like this one's extremely low. Carbon dioxide's triple point is at a very high pressure. It's 5 times atmospheric. So it's not necessarily consistent what pressure the triple point would be found at. But all substances do have one. It may be harder or easier to reach depending on the substance. But so at this point, I guess if this is kind of the culmination of the vacuuming. And you can see that because that pressure is still pretty low in here, it's gonna keep.
I didn't hear any explanation as to why that happened, and so just to finish my thought, or the explanation, is that once the water evaporates or boils, so when it starts to create its own pressure inside a vessel, which then condenses the water, but at the same time it's under vacuum, and so it's going like through these phases. And I'm not so solid at explaining it either. It is a radical thing, but just like when you have a snowball in your hand, and you squeeze it, you're able to get water out of it. But and then the ice cube becomes a little bit, like the snowball becomes more solid. You increase the pressure, and it becomes more solid. You release the heat from the water through pressure. Hopefully that makes sense. It's radical, like I said, like humans sweat because the evaporation, the secretion of fluids from our epidermis creates a barrier in which takes energy for the ambient temperature or the source of energy to penetrate our bodies Basically, we used water as a sacrifice.